Thank you, Vicki, for such a wonderful introduction. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey in quilts. But first I would like to explain why I particularly am here today. Vicki has said I'm an OSU graduate, which is true, but my family has a very long association with Oklahoma State University, or Oklahoma A&M College as it used to be called. So as soon as she gets everything up, I'm going to show you some pictures of one of my family members. And this is my grandfather. And he came to Indian Territory at the age of 6 in 1903. Now, can I just say, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, former teacher.
You do have a mic.
Have to
But-
wake up the ones in the back.
Always awkward.
Okay, my grandfather was the youngest of 12, and they came in a wagon train of covered wagons to a place in the Creek Nation called Hitchita. And I want to also say that all the photographs here have been taken by my husband, and he has also done this presentation. He can't come today because he's still suffering from COVID.
Oh.
But I want to thank him so much for making all this possible. If it weren't for him and Vicki, I would still be in London. So this is my grandfather. He only went up to school in the 8th grade. And afterwards, when he was a young man, he decided he wanted to know a little bit more about the best methods of farming and raising cattle. So he got in his car, the first car, in the area where he lived, and he drove to Stillwater. And he contacted the agriculture department, and he said, I want to know what to do and how to be a better farmer, a better rancher. So he kept going. This was in the early 1920s. He went for years and years to Stillwater. He had 3 daughters. One of them was my mother. So my mother and her 2 sisters both went to Oklahoma A&M. They all were, 2 were teachers, one was a librarian, and they all met their husbands here in Stillwater. My parents met at a dance in Stout Hall. So we have that relationship. Also, my father's family all went to Oklahoma A&M. Could we have the next one, please? This is on him on his horse Pickles. He was, in 1944, the Oklahoma State government decided that Oklahoma A&M needed a board of regents. And so my grandfather was appointed by the then governor, who was Robert Kerr. And so he started at 1944, after his daughters had got married, gone off to do whatever they liked. And he became a board member of the Board of Regents, and he was on the board for 27 years. Next one, please. They had a rotating presidency or chairman of the Board of Regents. So when I graduated from OSU, all of the dignitaries were up on the podium, and we all marched up to shake our hands and get our, what was supposed to be a diploma, but in fact it was the diploma cover. So I went up. my grandfather saw me coming, he got up, he came over, my grandfather handed me my diploma.
That's very cool.
So we have had 3 generations of our family at Oklahoma State, or Oklahoma A&M, and now my grandson, Matthew, is the 4th generation of the family. We've skipped a generation because my children were educated in England. Sorry. I will make them wear orange and black. So he will be an OSU graduate, and that will bring it back to 100 years of. I've seen the 100-year things on up near the student union about 100 years of OSU, and that's just about how long my family has been associated with education. Okay, can we have the next one, please? Oh, fantastic, thank you. My degree was in foreign languages, French and Spanish, so I had an opportunity to go to London, and I taught French at the American Community School in London for 7 years. Then I met my husband by then, so after I spent 7 years at the American school, I took some time off. I had children, and I decided that I would like to learn how to make a quilt for the bed. So I went to several classes. The first class, after I actually made a quilt for my daughter's wedding, which was made by hand, stitched by hand, quilted by hand, it only took 4 years. So I thought, maybe there is a better way here. So I took a class in making improvisational quilts by an American well-known quilter named Judy Traeger, and she became my mentor. I went to Colorado and did a week's class with her at her house, and she said to me, okay, now you know the basics. The next thing you need to do is join Studio Art Quilts Associates. And I said, okay, what is all this about? And she said, well, you'll find out. It gets better after you're a member. So I joined SAQA, and the joy of being with other people and be able to talk to other people about the things you are interested in. And it's everywhere I go, I always meet people. They say, oh, I'm a member as well. So you have that. We have 4,000 worldwide members. And it is a fantastic organization. If you're not already a member and you like art quilts, I really would encourage you to become a member. The first 2 quilts that I made when I was being mentored by Judy Traeger, I thought, well, she said, okay, you've made these, exhibit them. Where? So a friend of mine said, oh, have you heard about this woman over here? She sent a quilt to Japan, and it was really well received. And so I thought, okay, I'll enter an exhibition in Japan. Didn't think I was going to get in, but I did. I thought maybe, well, I sent photographs of both quilts. Maybe one might be okay. They wanted both of them, so I thought after they came back to me and I had feedback and I met other people from SAQA, then that's when I became a professional artist, a professional fiber artist, textile artist, however you want to say it. I've been making art quilts now since 1997. And one of the things that I have made is this, you will see in the exhibition. This is called A Year in the Forest, and it was made for the Ebb Flow exhibition. I wanted to enter it because it was such an intriguing title. And I thought of everything. I thought of ocean waves. And then I thought of maybe a big moon that controls the waves of the oceans. And then I thought, no, Lynn, stick to the thing that you love and you can do best. And that was trees. So trees are one of my favorite subjects for my art. I believe that trees are a metaphor for our life cycle. In the spring, you have new growth. Very small, gets bigger, the leaves go on the trees. In the summer, it's more fullness. And you have the nice warm weather, do a lot of things, and then in the autumn, things start to get a bit colder. So the trees change color, and then all the leaves fall. And you think, oh, okay, this is getting towards the end of the cycle here. And then you have the winter months, no leaves on the trees, but you still have a bit of life going on, even though it might be cold, it might be icy, whatever. So I think that trees represent, to me, the cycle of life. So could I have the next slide, please? This is my studio. I cleaned it up especially for you. I love bright colors. And although I have done some fabric painting in my career, I'm not really a dyer or a painter. I buy my fabrics from a German woman named Heide Stoll-Weber, and she is a master dyer. So the fabrics that you see here, this is of course my whole stash. So this is my main stash of fabrics, and I arrange them by color. And you can see some things here in the studio. So when I'm making a quilt, the first thing I think about, after I have a general idea of the design, I'm not a person that writes meticulously down and makes little diagrams. I just think, okay, well, maybe that might be okay. So I go to my stash and I pull out the fabrics. I want to see which fabrics are going together to make my design sing. And so I like the vibration between the different colors of fabrics. Often this is complementary colors or not quite complementary colors. I find actually work really well. So then I put it on my table, which is here in the middle, and I decide about what goes where, make the cutting out. A lot of my work is fused. So I use a fusible web, Bonded web, under Lisa Flex, whatever. That has many names, but it's all basically the same thing. And that is a fusible glue that has one side is a sheet of nonstick paper. So I put the fabrics, I iron the web onto the fabric. When it's cool and it's rested a while, then the fabric comes off. So the fusing is on the wrong side of the fabric. And then I cut it out and start laying them out on my table to see where I want this one, where I want that one. Then when I have finished putting them together and maybe ironed them down very, very, very lightly so that I can take them off easily and reposition, they go on my design wall, which is on the far right. So I need to look at my art on the wall. Looking at it on a table is fine, but you have to actually put it up on the wall to see exactly what it looks like. So you can see one of I think this is a finished piece that's on the wall there, which you'll see later on in my talk. This quilt, the one that you see me making, is a fairly new one, and it's not been stitched or anything. It's called Seed Pod. So maybe Fantastic Seed Pod. I don't know. Also in the large picture in the middle, you can see part of my studio. The wardrobe that is there, the cabinet is where I keep my fabrics, and the little armadillo quilt that is on the wall is called Imposidillo. So I collect Mexican folk art animals, and he was one of my favorites. He still is one of my favorites. So he is actually hanging just above the original Imposidillo. Next slide, please. So we're coming to the trees now. These are, I like, as I said, I want a vibration of the colors. So to me, these colors, some blend in and go away, some stand out, and some will vibrate. You'll see the vibration, particularly in the tree trunks and the green fabric there. Now, I started by trying to make the trees look like trees. So you could see these, you could tell they were trees. Next one, please. So then I decided, well, I want to go a little bit more abstract. So I thought, let's just take this down to the most essential part of a tree, which is the trunk. So these are trees, but not as you would know them. You wouldn't recognize these as trees if they were outside. You'd think, oh, that poor tree is dead. But these, I hope, aren't. And so this is called Early Spring. I was looking for a bit more depth in my work than just a lovely background. So this is why I have the dark pieces behind it, and they have been quilted in straight lines of various widths to represent the trees in the forest behind that you aren't seeing. Next one, please. Now, this is another one called Forest Sunrise. I actually brought this one with me. So you can have a look at that. I now back most of my work with black fabric, but if I can find African black and white fabric with the geometric designs of African fabric, I can buy in a 6-yard piece, then I will use those for the backs of my fabrics. Now this one, you can see, also has the background of the forest, the darker pieces. And the background of this is one piece of fabric. So it's a hand-dyed piece of fabric. And again, you can see the vibration of the colors, especially if you look at the turquoise trees, and there's the sunrise coming up. And so that's the vibration I'm looking for in my quilts. Next, please. This one, the Forest Autumn, I decided I would put a frame around the trees. So I made a lot of trees with just trunks, and a friend of mine said, oh, are you still doing your sticks? I said, yes, I am still doing my sticks, and this is one of my very favorite pieces. So the background that goes all around the sides is vertically stitched, as the ones have been before, to indicate the forest that you don't see. This is, all you see are the intervals of the trunks going across there. And then I decided to put a frame on it as well. So the frame is quilted horizontally, and the spacing between each one of the lines is 1/4 of an inch or less. I love doing that. I just love sitting there going, I may listen to some music, I may not. I actually am a silent worker, so I like peace and quiet. Then the trees now extend over the frame, and they have autumn colored leaves. Now these autumn colored leaves are also fused fabrics. And what I do to make them is I cut strips out, very small, maybe 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch strips. I take a pair of scissors, clip, 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 and then they go down onto the surface. Then I put a piece of parchment paper over the top and half of them come off because they are glue side up. So then I take my pair of little pincers and I go and I very carefully take them off and drop them, look at them. Oh yes, that's right side up. If it's not, and then do the process again. So it takes probably about 5 goes to get all of the leaves that I want stuck to the quilt. I made another one, and I will tell you about that later. That is, the blossoms are continually falling. But these little pieces, when I make one of these quilts, there are more on the floor than there are on the quilt. Okay, next, by the way, this one is one of 5 pieces that I have had acquired by the International Museum of Quilts in Lincoln, Nebraska. Thank you. My husband and I took a trip a few years ago, before the pandemic, fortunately, to Australia. Our favorite place was northern Queensland with the Barrier Reef, the Great Barrier Reef. When I got home, I thought, I want to have this memory of this wonderful place where we went. So I thought I would do another quilt with a frame, but this frame is very narrow. Jacaranda trees have blossoms that are huge, and they're all over Australia, jacaranda trees. They go from pink to blue to purple to mauve. And so I then went online, looked up. I have photographs and I think, okay, that's an okay photograph, but is it really the right color? So I went online, northern Queensland jacaranda, and it came out and it's exactly that color. So I did the jacaranda blossoms in exactly the same way. It didn't take, these are bigger pieces, so I could tell that a lot of them were glue side up, so I just turned them over. So I probably only had to do 3 passes with the iron and the parchment paper to get them all to stick to the quilt. Okay, next please. Now this is a small one, and I looked at this fabric and I thought, that looks like the atmosphere is kind of rising up. And so I didn't want to put the sticks on here. So I just started stitching the vertical lines to indicate the trees. And I was fairly pleased with that. So then I thought, well, I need some leaves. So in fact, these are larger bands that I then had to cut like this. And they still, of course, covered the floor. And in fact, some of these actually end up as well on my clothes, in the bed, on my pajamas. I don't know why I don't work in my pajamas. How did they get there? Who knows? Okay, next one, please. I also do, other than just trees, I also love to do abstract landscapes. And this is, in fact, I didn't know that those two had the same backing fabric until I brought them here and looked at them. I thought, oh, okay. So this is, I went to see my mentor, Judy Trigger, in Boulder, Colorado, a few years ago. And I took a photograph because I followed the sun from London to Boulder. So after a very long flight, it was still light. So I saw the sun setting, when we were at her house, the sun setting behind the Front Range. And I took, I don't know how many photographs. And so I then made this quilt, which is called Purple Mountains Majesty. So I don't know if you recognize that phrase. Yes, you all do, great. Because when I show this in England, they go, oh, they are purple, aren't they? And they're fairly majestic. We get it. But I was absolutely thrilled when one person who saw this said, is that the Front Range? Yes. I said, you win a prize. I don't know what the prize was, but anyway, a virtual prize. We're getting used to everything as virtual now. Okay, the next one, please. Now I'm getting more and more and more abstract. I went to a retreat of an art quilt group that I belong to, and the fabrics that I took to the retreat, I picked out my favorite colors, stuffed them in my suitcase. When I got there, I pulled out these fabrics. So I thought, okay, this is one of my very, very favorite color combinations, the green and the blue. And the one that is mottled in the center there, it's green, it's blue, it's purple, it's turquoise. What is it? It could be anything you want. Is it a storm at sea? Is it just looking out over a landscape? It can be whatever you see it is. And then I put a little red stripe in the top just because I thought it looked good. Okay, this one is also very densely quilted, so you can tell I had a really great time doing all the stitching. And when I first started doing this very dense stitching, lines very close together, I had a ruler and I was in, a tape, and I was trying to get this through the machine, and so I did this for about half an hour, and I took the quilt off the machine, put it on the wall, and looked at it, and I thought, there's not a single line in there that's absolutely straight. But I really liked the shadows that it made, the different widths of strips that are in there. You can pretend this is anything. This could be a sky. This could be a river, an ocean. It could be anything. So I make deliberate mistakes, of course. So if anything, you see anything that looks like it's probably not intentional, of course it is. Okay, next please. This is another one of my very abstract landscapes, and I put these two colors together and I thought, oh, that kind of looks like a really dark sunset over the ocean, and it's reflected down on some of the water. You may see something different, and that is completely right. So what I see is colors I love, and the stitching, of course. Okay, next one, please. Now this is another abstract landscape. I have lavender bushes in front of my house, and I go out when the petals are ready to be harvested. I go out and I harvest as long as my hands will last. And then I have a bowl of lavender, I don't know what they're called, bits, pieces, petals. Sorry?
Potpourri.
Yes, potpourri, yes. So I thought, oh, this is really nice because I've got this purple fabric out on my work table. And so I went over and I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's almost exactly right. What can I do to actually make people think of lavender? So I thought, lavender fields I've seen in France, in Provence, southern France. So a lot of my smaller work like this is mounted either on unpainted canvas or on cradled board. And so this one is on canvas. So what I did, after I had finished quilting, designing, choosing the fabrics, making, stitching this 12 by 12 piece, I sprinkled the lavender petals over the canvas. So, and then put this on top. So this is the world's first scratch and sniff. and 3 years later, if you go like that on the front, you can still smell the lavender. And next, please. Now, these are quilts that I made during the pandemic. We were locked down in the UK for about 8 months in the first lockdown. The rules of this were we could not leave our house. We could only leave if we were going to get food or if it was for medical reasons. The hospitals were not taking any patients except COVID patients. Everyone was wearing a mask. We had to be socially distanced. So the two red figures you see in there are my husband and I. We are standing in our front door. There's a step there, and everyone else has to stand 6 feet away from us, 2 meters. So we would have deliveries of groceries or items that we wanted delivered by my brother-in-law sometimes, because he lived by himself and he was also helping to care for his mother, my husband and his mother. So he would get things for us. He would come up to the door. It's almost like sneaking up, putting the package by the door, and then running back 2 more meters, and then saying, hi. So this is how we saw our friends. Now, the connections, the ribbon that you see that goes out, these are all of the connections to our friends and family. But there's a void in the middle. So it has nothing in it. The middle has nothing in it but these cord-like things. So we're trying to keep everything together, but we can't get out. So if you'll notice, the shape of the void is a screen. That is how we saw our friends, our family, our doctors. If we happen to need something, we saw them on a screen. So I almost entitled this Zoom, but I decided not to. So this is lockdown. Because of underlying health problems, my husband and I were locked into our house for 15 months. So all of the cords that connected us to other people were very, very, very important. And if one of them was cut, it would just be disastrous. Next, please. But I did have a lot of time to be in my studio. So I was extremely prolific during the pandemic when we were confined to our houses. So I had made a quilt that was similar to this, but was 9 inches square years ago. And I thought, I think I'd quite like to go revisit that. So this is revisited, again, with the heavy stitching and the vibration that you see between the colors. Next, please. I didn't want to do any more trees, mainly because I couldn't go out and see the trees. We live in a place in South London that has a lot of trees, so we could look out and we could see green. But my husband said, "You're not doing more sticks, are you?" And I said, "No, I'm looking for another series, but I can't think of anything." He said, "Why don't you just do shapes?" And I said, "Shapes? What's that?" He said, "What about circles?" And I thought, circles, yes. Circles will be understood by everyone. Everyone knows what a circle is, has seen a circle. And then I remembered that on a visit to Paris several years ago, many years ago, I saw some paintings by an artist called Sonia Delaunay. She and her husband were the first abstract artists in the early 20th century. And she painted circles. And so I copied from her the idea of the formation of this. So she has diagonal lines that don't go to the corners. And the circles are centered on those lines. So that is what I took from her. So this is called the homage to Delaunay. Next, please. So this is now a couple of quilts further on. And I had already made a quilt for, I've done a commission for someone that was a Beach Boys fan, like I am. And I had named it Good Vibrations. So this one is Good Vibrations #2. I like to think Brian Wilson's mind looks like this. Next, please. This is in fact, my daughter named this. She said, "Oh, this is nostalgia, Mom." So this is something based on I wrote down all the houses I've lived in my life, and there were like 20 of them. So I don't remember all of them, but I do remember the first house we lived in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where I grew up. And so I made a rough sketch of that. And the most important thing, or the thing I remember the most, is standing over the floor heater, which is in the center, to get warm in the winter. Because it heated the entire house, which was tiny. So this is the beginning of another kind of a nostalgic thing. And you know what they say, nostalgia, it's not really what it used to be. Okay, next one, please. So this goes back to my teens and 20s. How many of you have danced to a jukebox? Yes, yes. Okay, some of you won't admit it, but you did. So this is called Wurlitzer. I made a small one that I thought was going to be buildings. And In fact, the building said, we are not buildings. We want to be something more hip, more jolly, more encompassing. So that's where the Wurlitzer was born. So the Wurlitzer was a jukebox that had bubbles that rose up the side in glass tubes. And it had, you went and you pushed the buttons, you put your nickel in the slot, you pushed the button for the that song you wanted to hear, and it came up. So it came all the way up, and then it was like this, and the stylus came out, and you had music. So this is my own personal jukebox Wurlitzer tube. Next one, please. So this is the most recent thing that I have made. This is called Oklahoma Redbud Trees. And again, you can see I've gone back now to snipping. Yes, I went to a virtual retreat this year of my art quilt group, which was a couple of weeks ago, and I had the leaves and the fabric, the blossoms, and they went, not enough, Lynn. So, okay, that was day one of the retreat. Second day, here it is, you took a photograph of it, posted it, not enough. Not enough. I thought, okay. More clipping, more ironing, more leaves stuck to the paper. I decided then that, in fact, I had 6 or 7 different fabrics. I decided then that if they stuck to the paper, they were in the bin. I thought, I cannot face turning 100 of these over with the tweezers. So, third day, I think this is it. Oh, that looks really good, but not quite enough. So, day 4, the last day of the retreat, I thought, I'm going for it. I'm going for it. So I put hundreds more on there, and they all went, oh, isn't that nice? And I said, is it too much? They went, no, of course not. So I think it's perfect like this, but this one has made a transatlantic journey and has also left its little leaves and blossoms everywhere. In the suitcase, on my pajamas again, that were in the suitcase, took it out of the suitcase, on the floor of my daughter's house, on the bedspread. So I took it down and I did a lot of ironing and putting them back on, and then I thought, okay, that's it. After about an hour of doing this, I thought, that's it. That's enough. Enough of them are still there, and if any of them come off now, it's blossom drop. Okay, so I think that is it. There might be one more, I don't know. Yes, there is. So you'll notice that I am still wearing orange. And I wasn't even thinking about OSU when I put these clothes on. So I want to thank you all very, very much for coming. I do appreciate a good audience, and you have been a fantastic audience. So thank you very much. And if any of you have questions now, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes?
I'm curious, you said for the backings you can find in black and white.
No, South London, where I live, has a very varied community. So we have a lot of Caribbean people, Caribbean heritage, and a few African heritage as well. But in that area, most of them have a Caribbean heritage. But the African fabrics well, they're called African fabrics because the designs are African. I mean, if anybody knows more about this, then, you know, please correct me or tell me. But you have to buy them in 6-foot lengths. So you can't go and say, oh, I'll have a fat quarter, please. Doesn't work, okay? You buy them in huge bulks. And I buy them at a market that is about half a mile from my home. So I go through the market, and there they are. But the black and white ones are very popular and not really around very much. And in fact, they're not African. They're made in Holland. I think historically, there were a lot of fabrics that were made with a wax resist in Holland, and that's where a lot of these African fabrics come from, is from that kind of a technique in Holland. Anything else? Yes.
What does your future look like in the way of quilts?
My future, yes. Well, I will continue to make them. I decided that when I'm 90, I probably will think, should I stop? But then I remember that someone told me, what is the definition of an oxymoron? A retired artist. So, artists, as you know, artists never stop making art. One of my great friends had cancer. In the cancer ward, she had her husband bring her fabrics. And the day before she died, there's a photograph of her going. So I hope that's me. I will continue with the circles. I have some more ideas about, in fact, I have one that I haven't quilted yet that's black and white, only black and white circles. But I then capitulated, and it's got some very small red circles in it. Yes?
Lawnmower or domestic machine quilting?
I use a domestic machine. I have a Bernina with a long throat, and it was in one of the photographs.
With your motion kind of made me think it
Yes,
was more this
yes.
than this.
Yes, I do. Yes. Yes.
As you mentioned, when we visited, we're on a committee together. So can you share with our group some of the education opportunities through softball?
There are so many. There are videos you can watch of artists. There are textile talks. In fact, I'm in one of them. So if you want to have a conversation with the artist in Ebb Flow, I am one of the 4 people that are in this exhibition that talks about our piece in there. Also, there is a conference every year, and they have speakers will come in for this is the 3rd virtual conference we've had. So they have different speakers come in. Everything is on video. There are chat rooms. You can visit with people that you will never get to meet because they live in Tasmania, or they live in New Zealand, or they live in Alaska, or Japan. And then they also have things like studio tours. People will open their studios and explain how they work. Robin, anything else you can think of?
The mentorship program.
Oh, the mentorship program is very important. Robin is one of the people who guide the mentors. I'm a mentor as well. And I told you, I can't remember who it was, that asked me, because I mentor a French woman, and they said, and she doesn't speak English. So because I used to be a French teacher, And I foolishly told the person who was the head of mentoring that I was happy to speak to someone who spoke French. But it's turned out to be one of the most fulfilling parts of being an artist, is mentoring someone else who is like, wow, I never would have thought of that. So we've become very close as friends, and really, there are too many things to look at, to take part in. If you go on the Stockton website, there is so much on there. You would have to spend an hour every day looking at all of it.
I have a question. On that, the year in the forest, there's the script on the side.
Sorry?
Yeah, writing Chinese or
Oh,
something.
yes,
What is
yes,
that?
I forgot to tell you about that, sorry. Thank you. Yes, in my piece in Ebb Flow, A Year in the Forest, they have the Japanese kanji characters on the side. Yes. Okay, and those are the 4 seasons in Japanese kanji characters. Don't ask me exactly what they are, because I can only remember about 2 of them.
So did you script that? Or
Yes,
did-
yes, yes. I love calligraphy. I've studied Japanese calligraphy, and so I also have some books, and it tells you where to start, which is not usually the place that you think you will be starting when you make these. And I had about a 2-hour lesson from a Japanese calligrapher a few years ago, and she is the one that taught me how to manipulate the brush. However, I did practice with